Hello everyone, and welcome to another Star Trek Online video. So today we're going to take a look at the Suurok, a new ship that has been introduced with the 16th anniversary bundle. You can buy this ship in the bundle or standalone, and it is a science destroyer. And I'm terribly sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of those ship names. So we're starting off here in the Taylor, and this is the Suurok skin. There is also the Sonarch skin, which is a bit more modern and Starfleet themed skin, right? There is also a Vulcan version of that. So if you want your ship to still be looking Vulcan, but you can have essentially also a more Starfleet looking design. Of course, you can, no matter which ship you chose, you have a lot of options for materials. For example, there is also a pretty good looking Vulcan too here. And yeah, you definitely have some ways to customize this. You get the Starfleet materials, you get the Vulcan materials, you get some new materials, and I'm not sure if... What's that? Jellyfish. Okay, so yeah, you've got access to exotic materials. I'm not sure if all of them are unlocked with the ship or if some are unlocked from other ships you own, but you definitely have all of the basic Starfleet materials and the Vulcan materials and so on. Now, personally, I think this ship looks pretty gorgeous, and I'm really loving the looks of it. Now, further, you can customize like the hull pattern if you wanted something there, and then I think I might like this. Shall we do something more bluish? Oh, I think I liked it. So yeah, you can paint your ship any way you want. Obviously, let's go into space and have a look at the ship itself. And here we are in space. You can now see the ship in all its glory right here. Also, I can take a look how it would look with the Aegis Vanity Shield if you want things to light up a little bit more. There are, of course, a lot of vanity shields in Star Trek Online that you could apply to this depending on your personal tastes to further customize this. You know what? Let's throw this on there for now. I think it complements the purple with a little bit more of nice, lovely, shiny blue there. However, let's talk about the ship itself for a moment. So this is what is called a science destroyer. Science destroyer means this ship can switch between a secondary weapon and a secondary deflector. Actually, experimental weapon, not secondary weapon, I should say. Now, when I press this button here, which is tactical mode, you will see some fancy animation, and then we have our experimental weapon online. You might have also seen here, my commander is now no longer a science, my commander is now tactical. And when I do this again, then you will see this goes on a 20-second cooldown. So 20 seconds isn't too bad, but the problem is the mechanic is still very clumsy, I would say. Honestly, I personally believe that the Science Destroyer mechanic is a good idea executed poorly. Like if I go to my stations here, you will see it looks like I have two commanders, but I have that one commander skill only if I'm in the right mode. Right now I have Science, and I do this again, and I will lose that, and now I have Tactical. This means if I'm... also you might see the cooldown is only if you switch one way, right? If you go from like science to tactical, there is no cooldown, but the other way around, there is a cooldown. So 20-second cooldown just isn't enough, for example, to only use the firing mode from the tactical. So let's say I wanted to use a scatter volley 3 here, right? I would also need to bring a scatter volley 2, because maybe I want to use scatter volley while I'm in science mode. And if I only have a gravity well 3, then I can't use a gravity well while I'm tactical mode. And the switching isn't, like with the cooldown, 20 seconds isn't the longest cooldown, but it still means that you might not be in the right mode for the skill that you want to use. And if you want to double up on skills, then sort of the commander skill would be wasted. This would work a lot better if you could have a loadout, right? I mean, the system has a very broken loadout system, but there is a loadout system, right? Imagine if I switch the mode, it would be attached to a certain loadout, and it would work a lot better. Now, having that said, nobody forces you to use that. You can essentially always stay in tactical mode or always stay in science mode and treat this as either a destroyer or a science ship. And I just treat it as a science ship, and I always stay in science mode. I need to further note that some experimental weapons fire in science mode. You might see here it says only active in tactical mode, but there are some weapons that are, let's just say, buggy. And those bugs have existed for many, many years, and while individual weapons sometimes might get fixed, like I think last year they fixed the hexacannon. The hexacannon worked in, like, obviously not this ship is new, but in the other the Dyson Science Destroyers, you could use like the hexacannons for I think about a year until they fixed it, and then they only fixed the hexacannons, and other weapons still work. So you know, there are some that are buggy and they may or may not get fixed. This is also something how they could improve this whole concept. What if you always had the experimental weapon, but the damage would be halved if you're in the wrong mode, right? What if you always had the secondary deflector, but the damage would be halved if you're in the wrong mode? But anyway. I'm not here to preach about science destroyers, even though I've just done that. So yeah, some experimental weapons work, but be warned, the experimental weapons that work might change or might get fixed at some point. Now, this ship comes with just a standard experimental weapon. There is nothing exciting in there. What I have in here, the gold-type psionic resonator, is from, I think it's the Cyclone. It's from an older ship, right? And I mean, you can't just search gold-type psionic resonator in a wiki and you will find, I think it was the Cyclone. It also does psionic damage, which actually fits into science. Also, something they could do is that some weapons just always work in the experimental slot if they are science-based or something like that. Sorry, I'm preaching again. Okay, let's talk more about the ship. You have 4 forward weapon slots, you have 3 rear weapon slots, you obviously have your secondary deflector, only works in science mode, and you've got 3 tech consoles, 3 engineering, 5 science, and 2 universals if fully upgraded. This ship is at tier 6x2. Now for the stations, you have your Commander Tactical Command. That's only a commander in tactical mode, and then you have the Commander Science Intelligence. That's only a commander in science mode. Then you have a Lieutenant Universal, an Ensign Science, and the Lieutenant Commander Engineering. Okay, now let's talk about the build that I have put on this ship. Now, obviously, you can put different builds on this and play this as you want. I feel like this ship is quite a bit flexible there. You can put cannons on it, beams, you can do like broadside, you can do forward facing. I mean, in science ship, it always feels right to be forward facing. You can put like, you could put isomex on this if you want to more focus on like the weapon part, maybe focus more on your tactical side. Or you can focus more on your secondary deflector. Or you can do unconventional systems, which is what I'm doing, which focuses on a lot of console spam. But also, obviously, I'm using my secondary deflector here. Now, I have 4 dual heavy cannons in the front and 2 turrets in the rear, together with the Power 1 Omnibeam. I get 6 different damage types with this, so this ship is using the Twinkling Lights trait, which is from the winter event. Now, keep in mind, you can always access the winter store at any time of the year, but the resources to buy this can only be earned during the event. However, the resources are tradable, so if you still have some left over, you can always pick up this trade, or you could buy them from other people. You can buy them on the exchange. You can also buy the trade itself on the exchange. There usually is some on there. Okay, so those are my weapons. For the other equipment, I'm using 2 pieces of the Discover Reputation set. I'm using the shield and the engines. And mostly I'm using those for the 2-piece bonus, which gives you 120% hull regeneration. This is amazing to keep you alive. And I can highly recommend 2-piece set here on basically any ship, especially if you're having trouble staying alive. Try to put 2 pieces of Tilly set on it, and it just works very nicely. Now the other part is of course more science focused. It's from the Revolutionary set. The Revolutionary set is from an old event or can be bought in mods. Keep in mind, never buy anything on mods when it's not on sale. If you're interested in this, wait for a sale. However, the important part of this set is the 2-piece bonus, and the 2-piece bonus, you see here, gives me 53.7% exotic damage critical severity, which scales with Starship Weapon Amplification. So keep in mind you need to skill Starship Weapon Amplification in your personal skills to get the bonus off. But you should always skill Starship Weapon Amplification. Let's be clear about this. It's just too good to pass up anyway. But as you can see, that's a lot of crit severity. Now you should also note that there is a personal space trait called Particle Manipulator. And this is from getting 15 ranks in the Science R&D school. So all you have to do for this is in R&D level your Science school up to 15 and you automatically have access to this trait. And this scales with your exotic particle generators up to 50% crit chance. And there's obviously also severity. Severity of things scales like further, but 50% is the cap for crit chance. And this just makes your science abilities hit pretty hard. Because keep in mind, you have a base crit chance, and combined with that amount of exotic crit chance, it basically means your science stuff will crit constantly. And that makes crit severity so important, and that makes the 2-piece of this set so powerful. And of course you can also like re-roll some of the mods on this. I have a lot of Ctrl X and EPG here. Now let's go down here to the consoles. For my consoles, I have You Are Dismissed. This is a new console from the Ethereum Lockbox, can be found on the exchange for actually around 7-8 mil. Like it really prices vary, but this is something that you can pick up from the exchange, and it's not too horrendously expensive, but it's a very strong console, especially on a science ship, and it essentially creates a PBOIE. I can't use it right now, but I'll show that later in combat. It does a lot of damage in a large radius around you, and definitely a good pickup for any ship, especially for science ship. And I'm using the Cranium Chronophage, which is from it's also a console that you can pick up in the exchange, which is from an lockbox from last year, I believe. So 2 consoles you can simply buy for some energy credits. And very good consoles for an energy ship. The passives are not really why they are on there, but the active abilities are nice. And I'm using the Dragon's Blood Flame Reactor. This is from an old event ship, and it's like the flamethrower that you might know. But it's not just the active that's pretty nice. The passive gives bonus disruptor, fire, cold, electrical radiation, and psionic damage, which works obviously nicely with a lot of science powers, and like a second deflector, which does radiation damage. Then I'm using the Universal Custom Power Matrix. This is from an old event ship like the Winter ship, and it just gives you 3 toggles that essentially improve your weapons. Now, considering that this is a science destroyer and I get quite a bit of weapon damage out of it, this is just a good addition, I believe. Now, I'm also using the Fleet Power Network Array. This is from the Avani command carrier, or it's the Avani in the Senstor. So it's a Senstor console that gives you a lot of haste. The passive is also nice for a science ship, so you definitely want this to boost your energy weapons, and we have quite a few energy weapons on there, right? Keep in mind we are running 7 weapon slots on this. This is definitely a mixture of science and weapons. Then the particle conversion matrix is from the Guardian cruiser, also a sensor ship. And the interesting part on this is, while it's active, it's only active for 20 seconds, you get a lot of shield resistance, but incoming damage gives you 10% energy and exotic damage. And guess what? This ship does energy and exotic damage, so you can see how this combines just very nicely. Of course, this requires you to get shot at. Then we have the Gemini device, which gives passive some exotic damage and summons in 2 USS Enterprises. I like this console because I find it cool to summon in some Enterprises there. They do some reasonable amount of damage. It also gives you a bit of haste while they are active, and the passive, it just works quite neatly. Then I have an exotic particle field exciter. This is a craftable console. Those consoles are, well, depending on the mods, they can be relatively cheap. One with EPG is very expensive. You can't re-roll the mods on this, so you just need to craft enough until you get the proc. Another good alternative would be the same console with a Control X mod. They are quite manageable in price, and a little bit more pull on your gravity rail is also nice. You could also replace this with something else. The nice thing of the field exciter, I feel like, is you get like 2 science stats on it, and like it always has exotic particle generate on it, right? And then the second mod can be EPG as well, which means you get twice exotic particle generator, why I get 78.8. Or alternatively, if this was Control X, then half of it would be particle gen and half of it would be control. Then you always get the maximum shield capacity. Science ships tend to have a lot of shield already, so more shield is always nice. And there is like a little active block for some weapon power, which you don't care about that much. You could also replace this with other consoles that give EPG, but I like the exotic field excite. I feel like it's a good console to have around. Then I have the subspace fracture channeling field, also an event console from the what was it? Carrier, like this is it should already be in the sense that, like in the mods market, I think, right? Ships. How was it called? Woven Obelisk carrier. There it is. Right, there's the console from this. Once again, never buy anything here unless it's on sale. But I have this from the event. This console teleports you to an ally or foe. It has a 20-kilometer range, so it can be very handy getting around places. But the most important part is whenever you teleport, you reduce the cooldown on your consoles by 25%. And the console itself only has a 30-second recharge. So this console alone vastly helps you with reducing console recharge and allows you to really spam those consoles. I also have the Eye of Grapher, which is from the last winter event. Passive gives fire and psionic damage, which helps with the Dragon's Blood, Flame Reactor, and actually the experimental weapon that I have chosen here. And it's essentially just creates another gravity well, and you can never have enough gravity well, in my opinion. Then I have on the DPRM, this is, well, you can get this from, you can get this from Mud's Market, from a Mud's Bundle, that's what it was. There is a Mud's Bundle that has the ship on it that has the DPRM, or you could get this from, I think it was a Lockbox ship. So this console is hard to get, but it's not essential. Anyway, it's just a good defensive console, something a lot simpler to get with somewhat similar effect would be the console from the flagship set. I forgot its name, I'm sorry, but there is a similar console from the flagship set that you could also get. Whenever you see anything here on the screen and you aren't entirely sure where to get it from, keep in mind the Star Trek wiki can help you. You can just type in the name of things and it knows more than I do, trust me. Wiki knows a lot more than I do. Then the last thing here is the Proton Eruptor module. Actually, not the last thing. I think I've forgot to say that I have the micro-quantum torpedo phalanx array on it. Not quite fitting into a science build, but it's just a good console to have, and I have it. It's from the ship that also has the hexa cannons on it, whose name I'm always forgetting. So it's just a good console. You could replace this with something more sciencey. The Proton Eruptor is definitely a science console. It's from the Klingon Dyson Science Destroyer. Also Science Destroyer. Also a fun ship, by the way. But anyway. And yeah, just another science console. Okay, next up I'm gonna go over the stations, and then we will go over the traits that I have. So, I have the deteriorating deflector, right? There are essentially two secondary deflectors that do damage. One is the inhibiting, which works with control abilities, and the deteriorating, which works with generally like drain abilities and so on. I have the deteriorating one, and there are exactly two skills that I have on there that trigger my secondary deflector, and those are structural analysis and destabilizing resonance beam. Now, structural analysis comes technically from a lockbox, but you can buy this on the exchange usually for not too expensive. If you have one of the training manual boxes from the Infinity box, you can also find it in there. So, if you don't have that, you could, like the problem is the only other ensign skill I think that triggers this deflector is Tachyon Beam, which shares a cooldown with destabilizing resonance beam, but obviously you could change that to something else. Essentially, two skills that trigger the deflector are usually enough, in my experience. If you are not using unconventional systems, then you could fill up a lot more of those, because then you'd have lots to spare. But with the build that I'm using, two are more than enough, and that second deflector is certainly doing quite a bit of damage. Now, aside from that, in my tactical, I have a scatter volley, a beta, and tactical team. Now the tactical team is not that relevant, that could be replaced by other things. Tactical team is pretty nice because it auto-distributes your shield, and science ships have a reasonable amount of shield. So it can help you a little bit stay alive. You could run something like camo-satellized weaponry here. If you wanted to run a torpedo, you could run a torpedo spread 1 in here. You could run only 3 dual heavy cannons and a torpedo if you chose to do so. So there are definitely options. Keep in mind, you could also run this ship easily with beams or like dual beam banks in the front, and then you would just run like fire at will here. So for my engineering, I have 2 emergency powers, emergency power to weapons and engines. Now you might be wondering, why don't you have emergency power to auxiliary here? And the reason is because I'm triggering a trait with emergency power to weapons, and I want a little bit mobility from engines, but I have my auxiliary high enough, generally speaking, that I'm happy with that, especially since I also have EPS power transfer for even more full power levels, because I'm an engineer here. So I'm pretty happy with my power levels. You can see here resting I'm at 122. Obviously this will come down once I use all of the toggles, because there is one that reduces aux a bit. You could also reduce weapons a bit further, because the good thing about emergency power weapons is it gives plus 40 weapon power. So I could actually like tune this a little bit lower, even maybe set this to 80 and this to 90 if I wanted to. Now that's one of the good things of having emergency power skills, especially high ones. It allows you to keep like your weapon and your aux power pretty high, which is what you want in a ship that uses both science and weapons. Then here I have the unstable warp bubble, because it's an unconventional systems trigger. However, if you do not use like uncon, you could use something like reverse shield polarity here and get a little bit more survivability. Now for science, I have our impulse burst, electromagnetic pulse probe, and ionic turbulence, and I have a tractor beam here. Those are all uncon triggers. Of course, they also are not like the ionic turbulence, for example, debuffs resistance rating, so generally a nice thing to have. Gravity well is also an uncon trigger, but it's mostly there because it's gravity well. I want to pull ships together, and then throw my scatter volley in there, throw my secondary deflector abilities in there, throw my science in there, all the good stuff. So yeah, this about the skills. Now we'll have a look at the traits. So for my space traits, I have Boimler. This is something I highly recommend to everyone. It's from the lobby store for 200 lobi, and on sale it's like 160 lobi. If you complete the year-long event, you get 1,500 lobi. So this obviously takes a while, right? It's a year-long event for a reason. You don't need the full year, by the way. You could technically, if you do all the events, I think you could do it with like 4 events out of the 6. But I digress. You can also buy it in exchange. Great ability to have, and it helps with cooldown reduction. It has a 70.5% chance to set all cooldowns to its minimum whenever you use a Bridge Office ability, and if you spam your Bridge Office abilities, it will trigger. There is no guarantee that it triggers with 1 rotation, but it really helps. If you, by the way, need more cooldown reduction, you could run something like a Photonic Officer, but then you would need to give up one of the slots. But for example, if you are not doing like an unconventional systems build, you can always run something like a Photonic Officer here as well, and then some more things that trigger secondary deflect. What else do I have here? I have the Particle Manipulator, as I said earlier. I have Unconventional Systems, as I've mentioned earlier. I have Ablative Shell, which is just a defensive trait. Our lockbox, I have Grace Under Fire, which is an engineering trait. Context is for kings. I have Twinkling Lights, that's relatively easy to get from the winter event, and that's why I have all the different weapon types. Keep in mind, this damage resistance debuff is all damage resistant, so this helps the science abilities too. So not only are my weapons debuffing for each other, they are also debuffing for all of my science skills, which makes this work so well, right? Despite me not having any consoles that actually buff my weapon damage itself. I have Intelligence Agent Attaché, which helps reduce Captain ability recharge. Then I have Harmonic Shield Link, which that's actually a pretty good skill, right? You get max 2% of your max shields restored every 2 seconds for every player or allied NPC of a certain rank close to you. Now, you can see here I'm currently at 1 stack of Harmonic Shield Linkage. You always have 1. If I summon in my Enterprises, I'm now at 3 stacks, so they count. So I already, with this console, can give myself some stacks. Wingmans would also count, and if you're in a team of like 5 people, obviously you get 5 stacks from them. And the maximum would be 10 stacks, and at 10 stacks you would get 20% of your max shields every 2 seconds. You can already see how powerful this can become if there are enough NPCs around. I mean, that's at 10 stacks, right? At 5 stacks with just 1 full team without any other people summoned, if your team is close by, you would already be sitting at 10% max shields every 2 seconds. So this is a very good trait if you have a lot of shield to keep your shield regenerated during combat. And it synergizes very well with my particle conversion matrix, which gives a lot of shield resistance, and it also synergizes with the console here that gives me max shield. Now you see my shield energy is very low, but I don't need any more shield energy because I regenerate my shield with this trait and I get my shield resistance otherwise. So shield energy isn't something that I need, and yet I can do a lot with my shields, which helps keep you alive. Okay, I was talking about traits here. The last thing here is Fragment of AI Tech. Now, Fragment of AI Tech is a pretty cool trait. It's a lockbox trait, so you'd have to buy it on the exchange. And the trait itself gives you plus 50 control expertise, nice for a science build, but it also gives you energy weapon damage based on control expertise, right? So you can see I have about 255 control expertise, so I get 25.5% energy weapon damage, so I don't have the maximum here. If you had more control, you'd get a little bit more out of it. But it's just a nice trait because you want more control expertise on your science ship, and the energy weapon damage helps because I'm not running any consoles to directly buff any energy type, and I'm running like this rainbow setup for the debuff. So just generally a useful trait to have. Now let's go to my starship traits. I'm running emergency weapon cycle, which is why I'm running emergency power to weapons. If you don't have that, you could also run here emergency power to auxiliary and then crank up the weapon power and reduce the aux a bit. I mean, you can set your power settings any way you like. What works for you. Then I'm running Withering Barrage, which extends Scatter Volley because I'm using Scatter Volley. I'm running the trait from the Legendary Nebula. Now, this is a very good trait. Now, there are some people who will criticize how hard it is to keep all the stacks up all the time, but my counter to this is always, you don't have to. If I press 6 consoles, I have 6 stacks and my entire team has 6 stacks. And if then the 6 stacks run out and I activate the other consoles too late, it doesn't matter, I can then build new stacks, right? At 6 stacks, you'd have 6% crit chance and 60% crit severity, you and your entire team for 10 seconds. So if I'd like spam 6 consoles in rapid succession, I have more than 6 consoles that I can spam, by the way. But if you spam a lot of consoles, your team will have during the combat a varying number of stacks. Sometimes they'll run out, then you'll have them again. There is enough uptime with enough boost that it's just a very strong trade. And I don't worry about keeping them up. They will be there, they won't be there. Overall, through the duration of a battle, most of the time I will have some amount of stacks on me. And it gives crit chance and severity, and it helps my entire team. Which I think is pretty nice. It also gives auxiliary power, which also helps with science. The ruin of our enemies, now that's a very expensive trait that also comes from a ship in a Muds bundle. It's from promo ship. The what was it? The D7, the Discovery D7, I believe. Now there are plenty of other options that you could run for traits depending on what you have available. I understand that this is not a trait that many people have access to, but I have it, so I put it on there, and you know, it's not game breaking if you don't. Like, also, generally speaking about those traits, this is also from a legendary ship bundle. It's also quite expensive to get. Like, only the emergency weapon cycle, that's pretty cheap, and Withering Barrage you can get for free from a Klingon event. I think Klingon event is still running. Then Ship of the Line is also from a legendary ship. This is from the Battle Cruiser bundle, and First for Battle, both of those are from the Battle Cruiser bundle. And First for Battle gives me like a damage boost and a turn rate boost whenever I use Scatter Volley, which is nice because I'm using Scatter Volley. And Ship of the Line gives me crit severity. This is a very good trait that stacks you up to 50% crit severity, which you can keep permanently active if you just rotate to emergency powers, which I do. So for the space reputation here, I have auxiliary power configuration offense because of a high auxiliary, and then I just have crit severity and crit chance. And you can see my last slot is locked because my fleet here doesn't have the research lab unlocked, and I've never bothered to get this particular character invited in a fleet to unlock it, so I mean, it's not really needed, let's be honest. Now, enough talking, let's hop into patrol and show you this ship. Now, since this ship has a lot of AoE, I think the Nymph Drool would be a nice patrol. Often I hop into a Gala. But you know, this is a science build that can, like, easily farm vast amounts of enemies, so why not here where we can show off the AoE capabilities a little bit better.
The Carter is ready to assist you.
Now let's hop over there. Let's throw on our buffs.
Reading a single Ferengi vessel, Marauder class.
Let's see what enemies we are getting. And you can see I can use via this mist here, and this gives this lovely blue aura that does a lot of damage to everyone. And now we can throw out our second gravity well, maybe throw in a flamethrower here. They are getting all pulled together here. Of course there is so much spam on the screen that you can't really see my ship. That's just how science goes. That's just the power of science.
Well, there's Good, bad news. The Ferengi.
Ah, you
We've got company.
Cutting out the middleman here, Modron. Give us the spores.
treacherous. You'll get burst by the minute.
We've taken care of them, and now there is one large group where we can truly use all of our stuff.
I have a tunic worn by James T. Kirk, mint condition.
Why are you defending that Ferengi clone? He's not worth dying for.
And see, now we just pull them all together. I have a regular gravity well. I have the gravity well from the winter ship, the Soul Scream Vortex, so I can keep everyone nice and bunched up, and then I can farm absolutely everything that jumps in there. And just keep throwing a lot of AoE in there. I could even like use my Antares distress protocol, cause why not? Because, like, the thing is, if you have this much spam and your ship is kinda small, you have trouble seeing your own ship, which is a shame because it's a really pretty ship. And as you can see, like, I'm sitting in front of them, they obviously shoot me when they come in, but this ship has no trouble surviving. And it has absolutely no trouble killing.
Well fought. Modron's on his way to a...
Yeah, there you have it. So, thanks for watching, and see you next time.